All right. Welcome in, everybody. We are Biscuits and SEC Live. I'm Hammer. That is Boss Man. We are pumped up because we have a jam-packed show tonight ahead of week one. We've got our final predictions incoming for Tennessee, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Texas, as well as SEC title, SEC teams making the college football playoff, SEC awards like Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, etc. So we're putting a bow on the preseason as we gear up for week one. We typically during the show, we'll be talking a lot about the upcoming games of the weekend, as well as doing some recap stuff. But we've got our show tomorrow night with SEC After Dark, where we'll get more into the big matchups like LSU, Clemson, Texas, Ohio State, Auburn, Baylor, etc. So for this episode, we're kind of putting a bow on our preseason stuff as we gear up for the season. Thanks again for joining us. Like I said, jam-packed show. Boss Man, how we doing tonight?
Man, I am jacked to the tots, which is the PG version of what a wise sage once said, because it is week one. I cannot wait for football. It is almost here. We got Auburn, Baylor coming up on Friday. We got Missouri playing on Thursday with a little appetizer game. And then we have a bunch of good football on Saturday. Right off the bat, you got Texas, Ohio State, and multiple other games. So sit back, relax, or don't relax, because we'll all be yelling at the TV too. But it is going to be a lot of fun. As you said, we got a jam-packed show. Normally we get to a little bit of news, but we got a lot to do in terms of predictions, our SEC awards, all of that sort of stuff. So as another wise sage once said, let's get this bread. We got a lot to get to. It's going to be fun.
That we do. So real quick, y'all know the deal. Sign up for the newsletter if you have not already. It's free, coming to you every Monday and Friday. Now we restarted our in-season cadence this week. So if you didn't get one this morning like you're used to during the offseason, that is why. We sent it on Monday, and we'll have another one coming out Friday. Again, just wrapping up some of our off-season stuff. We're still putting 16-16s up on the blog. We've had Mizzou earlier this week, LSU earlier this week, and we have quite a bit to get to before the season begins. So be on the lookout for those on social. Below, we didn't update the graphic, but Iron in the Blood, if you were with us last week with Jay Busby, that book is now out. So as of yesterday, you can order it. Go order it. And we've got a contest to give away a free signed copy as well, which we'll dive into later with more details. But anyway, I think I've done enough kind of rambling. Again, we do have a jam-packed show, so we've got plenty to get to. So without further ado, I think we ought to just hop into our predictions here. So as you can see on the rundown over there, we've got Tennessee, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Texas remaining. I think we ought to start out with the Texas Longhorns, given they are the number one team in the country. They are most people's favorite, I guess, at least in Vegas, to win the SEC. They are, a lot of new, but a lot of talent. Arch Manning, of course, comes with, his own, gravitas, whatever you want to say, just given the pedigree he comes from and the hype surrounding him, despite not really playing a ton of meaningful snaps at Texas so far. So let's hop into it. Our Texas predictions for the upcoming season. Let's see. We've got Boss Man and Hammer going with 9-3. So both of the Aggies, unsurprisingly, kind of snubbing their noses at sticking their noses up at Texas. Not quite sure that the number one, ranking is, I guess, legitimate with these 9-3 rankings. So I've got Georgia as the pivotal game. You've got Ohio State. I will let you lead us off. So walk me through how you get to 9-3 for Texas, and let's talk about that pivotal game this weekend against Ohio State.
No doubt. So I've got we've talked about it on the show before, right? That Texas, okay, they have a lot of returning production. If you look at their returning production numbers, it's pretty high. So typically you would think, okay, we got a lot coming back. We're really excited about what we have coming back, and that means we're going to have a great season. 9-3 is a great season by most program standards, maybe not if you're Texas or Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State. So Texas is not looking for a 9-3 year, but even with all of that returning production that's coming back, I still have a lot of question marks with this team. And it starts at quarterback. I think Arch Manning, there's a ton of hype around him. Everybody knows his name. He's already a household name, and he really hasn't taken many meaningful snaps for Texas just yet. So, but with that said, the offensive line is what concerns me a little bit. You have a new offensive line. You're breaking in 4 new offensive linemen. They're towers. We know they're big guys. Texas has recruited very well at that position. So it could be next man up, but breaking in 4 new guys along the offensive line, typically that is a little bit rough, especially in these first few games. And so with that, you need to protect Arch. Arch can run. We know that he's got wheels, but you need to be able to protect Arch if you're going to have the season that you really want to have and that you think you can have, which is be college football playoff bound again and potentially compete for a national title. Not only that, they also have to replace some on the defensive line. We've talked about some of the transfers they brought in. It was Travis Shaw, Cole Brevard, Travis Shaw, former 5-star from North Carolina. But they have to replace a good amount there too. Also, we may talk about this guy later in the show, hint, hint, foreshadowing, but Colin Simmons is an absolute stud along the defensive line. So a lot of returning production, but there are some big question marks here on this team. I'm not worried about some of these position groups, but 2 big ones, defensive line and offensive line, are really where I'm a little bit worried about it. And I think they're going to be really good come late in the season. But the reason that I have Ohio State here as their pivotal game, let's bring up their schedule here for a second. Right off the bat there, Saturday, big noon kickoff in the shoe against the Buckeyes. And offensive line, breaking in those 4 new guys, like I mentioned, go into the shoe. If this was a night game, I'd be even more worried for Texas. But because it's a noon game, I guess it's a little bit easier. I don't know why Fox keeps trying to make this thing happen, but the big noon kickoff it is. But Texas still has some tough games on their schedule. They have to go to more road games this year, and they just flipped their schedule from last year. But Florida is no slouch this year. Got to go to the Swamp. Neutral game against Oklahoma looks a lot more daunting this year than it has in past years and recent history. And then Georgia, obviously, and then A&M at the end of the year. Who knows? For me, the reason that pivotal game is here right off the bat is a little bit selfish because to me, if they beat Ohio State, Texas is not going 9-3. But if they lose to Ohio State, and I think there's a real good possibility that they do. Ohio State also returning a lot of production. Julian Sayin, the quarterback, former Alabama quarterback, Julian Sayin for about 2 minutes, former 5-star. A lot of questions about him. He's a new quarterback, got to break him in as well. But I like the fact that it's in the shoe for Ohio State here. So if Texas beats Ohio State, they're not going 9-3. They'll be 10-2 or better. And then we'll see them in the college football playoff. If they lose to Ohio State, you could be looking at 9-3. And our friend Stephen Willis of Locked On Ole Miss, he's had Texas on 8-4 watch as well. So I think Texas is a very good team. This is one of the most talented rosters in America. But I just have some questions along that offensive and defensive line that gives me a little bit of concern, and which is why I put them at 9-3.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, to show my prediction again, in case you just joined us, I've got them going 9-3 as well. So I share your concerns, not to belabor the point, but if you're replacing 3 starters that all got drafted on your defensive line and 4 starters on your offensive line, that I think 3 of which, maybe even all 4 were drafted, I don't recall, but at least 3 of my offensive line were drafted. So you're sending guys to the league and replacing all that production in the trenches when we know this is a league that is won and lost in the trenches. I mean, look no further than what Texas was able to do to Texas A&M last year in the trenches, and then what Georgia was able to do to Texas in the trenches. I mean, those games were completely won and lost by what teams were able to do up front. And Texas got the better of A&M, and then Georgia got the better of Texas. But the point being, you have to be able to win the battle up front in the SEC. And in my opinion, at least where we sit now heading into the 2025 season, there are really 3 programs maybe not even 3 anymore with Saban being gone, but over the last decade, let's say, there's really 3 programs that you can blindfold me before the season starts, tell me they have no returning production, and you never heard of any of the guys that are going to become stars, and they're going to still go, 11-1, 12-0, and be there at the end of the year. And that's Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama. Texas might be there, and this is sort of the year to prove that. But I'm not ready to crown them as a team that's at that level when they're replacing a lot of production, especially up front. So that just is what worries me there. And I think, I really don't know what to think about Arch Manning, truthfully. I think he's probably going to be good to very good, but we just don't know how he's going to react in certain situations. He's also breaking in really a new wide receiver core. That's another unit that they sent multiple guys to the league. The top 2 receivers from last year are gone. Talented, sure. Ryan Wingo's fantastic, on paper, but we haven't really seen him do a whole lot in terms of production. I think he's perfectly capable, but we just haven't seen it. I do worry about the offensive line, so Arch might be under pressure more than Quinn Ewers was a year ago. And to bring up Quinn Ewers, that's the one thing that gives me pause on Arch. For the number 1 recruit, the pedigree, everything about him says star. But I don't know the inner workings of Texas, and I thought Ewers was good, but he didn't start over Ewers, and a lot of Texas fans thought he should have been. Well, again, I don't know the politics going on behind the scenes, but there's a reason that Sark didn't start him. So if he's not better than Quinn Ewers, maybe he will be by now and moving forward into the season. But again, with that backdrop and just the fact that he's brand new, the O-line's brand new, the wide receivers are brand new, the tight ends are brand new, Gunnar Helm also to the league. So I'm not quite ready to, again, crown them as a team that's going to lose all that production and just roll through the schedule no problem, especially when the schedule, for as much garbage as we gave Texas last year, deservedly so, those home games have flipped, right? So we got it wrong here at the end with the A&M. That game's at home, but the rest of them, they travel to the Swamp this year, and they won't be playing the Yale transfer quarterback. We hope, obviously we hope DJ Lagway's healthy, but that's a much tougher game. Kentucky, Mississippi State, Georgia, all on the road. Those are all much tougher games than they had last year. I don't expect them to lose to Kentucky or Mississippi State, but the point stands. It's a lot harder to go on the road in the SEC. And, Texas didn't really have to do that much last year. They went to Arkansas, was really their only, and then A&M at the end of the year were really their only tough road games. Where here, they've got at least 2 that really stand out in conference, along with the Ohio State game. And I think that neutral site game, the Red River shootout, is another one that, I'm not ready to just give to Texas. So I think there's losable games here with the lack of returning production. I'm going to predict them to go 9-3. It'd be right on the bubble of the playoff.
I think you're spot on. Obviously, I agree with you. 9-3 is where I'm at. There's just everything you laid out, the offensive and defensive lines, this league, as you said, won in the trenches. I will say Sark has been extremely consistent in his time at Texas. So really could be, with all the talent on this roster, no matter what happens in the Ohio State game. I know that is my, that's my pivotal game here, but this team could be really humming on all cylinders come like week 4 through the end of the season, right? Week 6 through the end of the season. So even at the outset, if they lose to Ohio State, I wouldn't be surprised if this team really gels, week 6 through week 12 and is vying for a college football playoff spot. Sark has made the college football playoff at Texas now multiple times. They're one of the most consistent and best recruiting schools in the country at this moment. So Texas fans, don't hate on us too much. I know we're Aggies and we're picking them at 9-3 here, but that's not too much homerism. I think we have a lot to back that up. I do like Arch Manning's mentality. I love that quote that he had the other day about, is there a target on our back? He said, well, actually, we think it's the opposite. We actually have a sight. We got a red sight on everybody else. So I like where his head's at. I just got to see it first.
Totally. So to close this out, I had the pivotal game as November 15th at Georgia. The the reason I did that, again, the Ohio State game is an easy one to say is a pivotal game, especially if you're thinking about Texas over/under win total at 9.5. I picked the Georgia game just because, again, the schedule that Texas had last year, everybody kept saying, well, just wait till they play Georgia, wait till they play Georgia. And they were proven right. Georgia whipped them in Austin, and then not whipped them, but beat them with a backup quarterback in the SEC title game. So I just look at that game as a big-time revenge game and a game that, regardless of what Texas record, it could make or break the season in two ways. One, if they are having a down year and maybe trending toward 9-3, that would be a good feather in the cap for them to just, hey, we're here in the SEC, we're ready. Obviously, they darn near won the thing, but just again, it's a what's it called? A narrative, breaker, right? That they are ready, they can compete with the big dogs, they can go into Athens and win, and that might, salvage, quote unquote, a disappointing season. Or on the flip side, if they are really rolling and they have aspirations, as they do, obviously, for a national title, well, going into Georgia and winning would really put everybody on notice and say, oh,
Yep.
okay, they are everything that we thought they could be. And, they just beat Kirby Smart and Georgia on the road. And so, watch out for this team come SEC title and playoff time, because they're ready. Whereas if they lose that game, I think you'll get a lot of kind of the same talk from people like us or people in the media who are just saying like, well, are they really ready? Is Texas, even if they make the playoff, well, they lost to Georgia again on the road. Like, can they really take that step? So that game, I think, is really important for them, both just from a personal pride standpoint, as well as kind of a broader narrative standpoint as well.
Agreed. Thank you, Corey. That's Corey Burton of Locked On Vandy. Y'all go check him out. Go subscribe to his channel. Good to see you, my man. Many more to come. We got a couple more here.
Couple more. So let's keep chugging. We will go to the real UT, the other UT. Depends on what you prefer. But we'll head on over to Knoxville in what could be a transition year. So I think I jumped out of order on that first one. But first, we'll run down the schedule, and then we'll go with our predictions here. So for Tennessee this year, they open up on Saturday with Syracuse in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz. So a quote-unquote neutral site game that will be filled with Tennessee orange, not Syracuse orange, as we know. And then, golly, Eastern Michigan, who do we have here? East Tennessee State is week 2 matchup at home. And then they, East Tennessee State. Then they go, host Georgia, host UAB, travel on the road to Mississippi State, get a bye week, host Arkansas in a revenge game. Then they go on the road to Tuscaloosa, play Alabama, on the road to Kentucky the following week. That'll be October 25th. We got to get our graphics department up to speed here. Then they host Oklahoma, get another bye week, and then close out the season with New Mexico State at home, on the road at Florida, which is weird. That game is in November now instead of September, but I guess with the SEC schedule being wild now, that is what it is. And then they close it out with Vanderbilt. So based on that schedule, based on everything we know about Tennessee, here are our predictions. We agree again. We both have the Vols going 8-4. You've got the pivotal game against Alabama, and I have it against Oklahoma. So I will let you lead us off again and just walk us through the 8-4 record for Tennessee and what your thoughts are on the Vols in 2025.
I just think we've talked about it a little bit before, and now doing the research, I think that my thoughts originally, my gut feeling on Tennessee is confirmed, really. And we all know the Nico situation that happened over the summer. Josh Heupel, I think, handled that about as well as he could have handled it. I think that Tennessee has the right man for the job in Josh Heupel. That being said, I think this is kind of a mulligan year. We've got Joey Aguilar, who came in. He's only really had the fall to get ready for the season. We don't exactly know what to expect from him. Josh Heupel typically limits turnovers in his offense. Joey Aguilar has a lot of trouble with turnovers, at least based on his 2 seasons at App State. So maybe he's able to cut down on those turnovers at Tennessee. That remains to be seen. I don't know what his connections to his wide receivers is going to look like. We've got a lot of new wide receivers that we're having to break in. We got Mike Matthews. They were able to retain him after he flirted with the portal. Former 5-star. Everybody's really high on him. I'm high on him as well. I think he could have a really good season, breakout season. Chris Brazell at wide receiver as well. Very interested to see what he does. However, they also lost, multiple receivers and tight ends to the portal. So there's just a lot of new things going on in this offense, not to mention Dylan Sampson was the leading rusher in the SEC last year. He's no longer on campus. He's in the NFL. So we got to break in a new running back as well. I think that this Tennessee defense is going to be pretty good again. They've been good under Heupel. He had his best defense at Tennessee last year. They still have some dogs on that side of the ball. I will say this, I'll bring up the schedule here just a second. I like how the schedule sets up for Tennessee. If you look at the first 6 games here of the schedule, you can really make a case that Tennessee could be 5-1 heading into that Alabama game. And for me, the Alabama game is the pivotal game of the season for Tennessee, because if Tennessee is 5-1, if their only loss to date to that Alabama game is Georgia, if Tennessee can figure out a way to beat Alabama, then we're actually talking about college football playoff, and our predictions are way off. But the schedule is a little bit back heavy here with Alabama, Oklahoma, Florida. Don't discount Vandy. Vandy played Tennessee very tough in the first half last year until Tennessee, overtook them in the second half with the offensive firepower. So don't overlook that game. But I just think that with all of this stuff going on with Tennessee, with a new quarterback, with the new wide receivers, having to break in a new running back. I know Josh Heupel's offense, they produce good running backs. He produces, 1,000-yard backs like it's his job. But I just think that there's a little bit too much. There's too much headwinds right now moving against Tennessee to really think that they're going to go 10-2 again and be back in the playoff, or go 9-3. So while I could see a 9-3 season based upon, that schedule and what I just laid out there, I really think that this is kind of a mulligan year. I don't think they take too much of a step back. I don't think we're talking about 6-6 here, barring, crazy injury bug that hits the team. I just think that 8-4 is a happy medium. And for the headwinds running against this team right now, that's kind of where my head lands.
I agree. Obviously, I've got them going 8-4 as well. Honestly, very similar reasoning to everything you laid out, but also just to what we laid out about Texas. Tennessee's replacing 4 offensive linemen. They had James Pierce go in the first round on defense. They had 3 other interior defensive linemen who are no longer, there onto the NFL. So they're replacing a lot on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They're replacing their top 3 wide receivers. And you mentioned Dylan Sampson. I'm with you. I think given Heupel's offense, Tennessee will have a solid rushing attack. They brought in the transfer from Duke, Star Thomas, who had 800 yards last year on the ground. And, of course, they have, guys waiting in the wings that were recruited there in Deshaun Bishop and Peyton Lewis. But I don't think those guys are Dylan Sampson. He led the SEC in rushing. He was the SEC Player of the Year on offense and had 22 rushing touchdowns. I just don't see that from any of these guys. So, yeah, replacing your running back, who was the SEC Player of the Year, 4 offensive linemen, multiple starters on the defensive front, and I haven't even gotten to quarterback yet. So that's just a lot of newness. And, yeah, I am very skeptical on the Joey Aguilar experiment. Given what we just laid out, they're not going to have, in my opinion, as good of a ground game to hide some potential deficiencies that Joey Aguilar has, most notably his interception issue. He's 24 interceptions in 2 years at App State, and no offense to the Sun Belt, but this is not, App State's schedule. So hopefully he has gotten some of that out of his system, and I think Heupel can protect him quite a bit in his offense. But that's a lot of turnovers in very recent history for a guy who was playing at the G4 level. or G6, excuse me. I'm P4, G6. I can't keep it straight, but you get the idea, right? He's taking a big step up in competition. So to just, again, kind of assume that turnovers are a thing of the past, in my opinion, is a bit short-sighted. So I think there's a good chance that they struggle on offense more so than you would expect. I had this Oklahoma game as the pivotal game, mostly because, again, if you look at their schedule, like you said, there's a good chance that they get off to a very hot start. Of course, that Georgia game will be tough, and then they go at Alabama. I had the Oklahoma game as a pivotal game because I think both of those teams are in very similar situations, meaning coming into the season, they both are, from the outside looking in, thought of as kind of middle of the pack, hard to distinguish who's better than who type of a team in the SEC. Obviously, internally, they have their own goals and expectations and reasons for those. But externally, those teams on paper look like it's very hard to tell who's going to be better than the other. And so the fact that Tennessee gets that game at home, I look at this and think if they want to get to 8, or as you mentioned, possibly 9 wins and, push for a potential spot in the college football playoff, even at a 9-3, because I think we could see that this year, that's a game they have to win at home. You cannot lose that game at home when you've got, Georgia on your schedule, you've got a road trip to Alabama, you've got a road trip to Florida. I just think that's if Tennessee wants to have, a good year by their standards, they got to get Oklahoma at home. So I put that as my pivotal game for the Vols.
I'm with you. I would say, another thing to just mention here real quick off the bat, Syracuse isn't a pushover. Syracuse could very well push Tennessee. I think Tennessee's going to win that game. I think they're more talented, but Syracuse last year was 10-3. I know they got to replace Kyle McCord. They bring in Steve Angeli at quarterback. This isn't last chance U like UNLV, but they also have multiple guys who are former 4-star, type recruits who were in the SEC. Jonte Cook, wide receiver, formerly at Texas. You also have, I always pronounce his name wrong, Naquil Bertrand, who was at Alabama. So, there's multiple guys here. They've done a good job in the transfer portal. Syracuse is not one to overlook. So if you're a Tennessee fan, I'm sure you're biting your nails a little bit about that one. You should be. Again, I don't think you're going to lose, but just something to keep an eye on.
Totally. Again, especially with all the newness on offense we just laid out, right? 4 new offensive linemen, new quarterback, new running back. All 3 of your top wide receivers are gone.
Yep.
In college football, even in the NFL, like offense is typically the thing that takes a little bit of time to gel if you don't have experience and continuity, which Tennessee does not have. So week 1, there's no preseason in college football. You are ready or you're not. And I could see that. Yeah, I could see that game being a nail biter because, I'm not going to pretend I know what Syracuse has going on their 2 deep, but I know Fran Brown will have the team ready to play. And they might be just totally overmatched and lose, but they're not going to be scared of Tennessee. So Tennessee's going to have to come ready to play in that opener for sure. All right. We got 2 more predictions left. So we will keep chugging along and we'll head to the state of Mississippi. Let's go with Mississippi State here. And I can lead us off on this after we go through the schedule because I am a believer in the Bulldogs this year.
Ooh, I like it. You want me to intro it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So Mississippi State Bulldogs here. This is their schedule. Right off the bat there, you get Southern Miss, which is essentially just Marshall's team from last year. Then you get Arizona State. Arizona State, a playoff team last year. We'll see what they look like this year. They lose Cam Scatabo, but still should be a pretty solid team. Kenny Dillingham has done a great job out there in Tempe. Alcorn State, NIU, and then you get Tennessee at home there on September 27th. Then you have to head to College Station on October 4th. Rough stretch right there with Tennessee, A&M, Florida, and then Texas. Get your bye on October 11th before heading to the Swamp, which is nice. And then November 1st, you got to go to Fayetteville. Then you get Georgia. Then you get Missouri. And then obviously, as always, the Egg Bowl there to end the year. And you get a bye right before the Egg Bowl. So, well, that's kind of interesting. Maybe look out for Mississippi State there in the Egg Bowl when they have to travel to Ole Miss. So, drum roll, here is our predictions for the Mississippi State Bulldogs this year in 2025. I got them going a hearty 3-9, hard-fought 3-9. Pivotal game, Arkansas Hammer. You have them going a much better 4-8, and pivotal game there, Southern Miss. So aside from my sarcasm here, walk us through how you got to 4-8 and why Southern Miss right out the gate is Mississippi State's pivotal game.
Yeah, so a little bit of sarcasm for me there too, saying I believe in the Bulldogs this year, and I have them going 4-8. I believe in them to hit the over, and that is their 3.5 win total. But I do think there's still a very long road ahead for Jeff Lebby and the Bulldogs in Starkville. But I just think with that their schedule is fairly workable. Again, especially if we are going, to try to get them to 4 wins, right? And a lot of this hinges on, because look, everything I've said about, Texas, Tennessee, the offensive line applies in spades to Mississippi State. I mean, they lost everybody. I think they had nine offensive linemen leave in the portal. I mean, it's a brand new cast of characters. They had the 17th highest rated transfer portal class this past year. So they were doing things in the portal. They brought in a ton of guys, basically a whole new roster. But Lebby has said, of course he's going to say this, but he has said we are much more talented this year than we were a year ago. So take it with a grain of salt, but also a little bit of, hey, he's probably right because they weren't very talented a year ago. And we liked what we saw from President Van Buren last year as a true freshman thrust into action, but we're, I think, overlooking Blake Shapen, and he has to stay healthy, of course, but in his last full year of football, which was 2022, so it's been a while, but he finished 3rd in the Big 12 in QBR at Baylor. And last season, before he went down with an injury, he was completing 69% of his passes and had an 8-to-1 TD to INT ratio. And if you recall, again, before he went down, they went into Tempe and lost by 1 score to Arizona State. So if we're just trying to get to 4 wins, I think it's doable here. Again, if you look at this schedule, I think there's 2 ways this happens. They either jump up and bite somebody in the SEC and get a win. I'm looking at maybe Tennessee, maybe Arkansas if that team has quit by November. Maybe Mizzou, probably not though, being on the road. And then the Egg Bowl, who knows, but probably not. So there's a couple games there where I at least give them a puncher's chance to steal an SEC game. But that September 6th game, I'm telling you, I don't think, I'm not going to come out and predict them to win it until I at least see what they can do in week 1 against Southern Miss. But again, they played that Arizona State team close a year ago. No offense to the Big 12, but I don't think the competition is near what they would see in the SEC. And I like the spot of that game. It's week 2. It's going to be sold out. Nobody in Starkville is going to have given up on the season by then. So Arizona State's going to be in for, they're going to be walking into a buzzsaw. I'm sure they're aware of that, but they are definitely going to be walking into a buzzsaw in week 2, which is why the week 1 game is my pivotal game, because Southern Miss is basically the Marshall team from a year ago that won the Sun Belt with Charles Huff, the Marshall coach, taking the job down there and taking essentially his entire roster. So they're not a bad football team. It's on the road in Hattiesburg for God knows why. And again, there's a lot of newness at Mississippi State. So I'm believing in them, but I don't really know what I'm going to get. And so for them to come anywhere near 4 wins, they have to win week 1. And there's just no 2 ways about it. And so, and you're going to get the best shot, right? It's in-state rival in your home stadium for Southern Miss. I mean, they are going to be ready to get that dub. So I Lebby, Mississippi State, I just need y'all to handle business week 1 and then show me what you can do week 2 and see, because if they're 2-0 after week 2, I'm feeling great. If they're 1-1, I'm feeling iffy. If they're 0-2, blow the whole thing up. It's tanking season, even though you can't tank in college football. So that's where I'm at on Mississippi State. It's a lot of newness. I don't have high expectations, but I think they can get to 4 wins this season. How about you?
I don't think they can get to 4 wins, but it's there. You just laid out how they get there. They have to beat Southern Marshall in Hattiesburg. But you mentioned it, and we've talked about it on the show. I forget exactly how many, 50 new faces on campus, 60 new faces on campus. I mean, the amount of
new scholarship players,
60 new scholarship players. That's the headline. That's the only thing you need to know. That's the problem, is that they just had to completely turn over this roster again. This is the second year in a row that they've had to completely turn this roster over. They lost a lot of talent in the portal. I mean, President Van Buren being at the top, Mario Craver now at Texas A&M. Everybody's talking him up, like he's incredible, and he may just have a great year at A&M. So, and that's not the only ones. There was multiple others they lost in the portal where it was like, okay, yeah, this team wasn't that talented this year, but all of the talent that they did have also left in the portal. They brought in some good talent. You mentioned it, 17th ranked portal class. A lot of those guys were 3 stars. A lot of it was just racking up the amount of transfers, because you look at their class, it was like, 25 kids in their transfer class. So a lot of that is just numbers, right, that push that class up there. But you do have Blake Shapen coming back. You also have Brennan Thompson, who was at Oklahoma at wide receiver, Malik Silla coming over from A&M on the defensive line. I'm excited about him. He just got buried at A&M with all the defensive line talent that they had. Keep an eye on Malik Silla. That kid has some twitch. He's pretty lanky for a defensive lineman, but he may, kind of go into a jack linebacker type of situation over there at Mississippi State. And he could be a really good defender and someone that people weren't expecting, or a name that a lot of people don't know, but you look up midseason, you're like, this kid's balling out. So you got him. You got Jere Bledsoe, who was at Texas last year. So there's multiple guys. Zachary Tillman as well at mid linebacker. I mean, there's talent on this roster. It's not like this team is completely depleted in terms of talent. However, there's a reason a lot of those guys weren't playing at their previous schools. And it just is too much that's new. You need continuity on a roster. We've talked about it on the show. We harp on it all the time. Continuity in the trenches is huge. Continuity on your coaching staff is huge. Continuity on your roster, retaining guys on your roster in the transfer portal era is huge. The teams that we see that have to completely overhaul their roster, looking at you, Arkansas, looking at you, Mississippi State, they typically have not had a lot of success recently. So it seems like the formula is retain players, recruit well, and backfill through the portal. And that's just not what Mississippi State has going on. I know that Jeff Lebby wants to get there, but it's not this year. So I just don't really see where the wins are coming this year for Mississippi State, especially when we're talking in conference. I would love to be wrong. I would love for Mississippi State to start getting back to some of those winning ways that they've had in the past. But pulling up their schedule here, one more time, I am a little bit worried about Southern Marshall there right out of the gate. Arizona State, I think you're right. Them coming to Starkville, it could potentially be a win there. But I'm looking at this schedule, and, for folks who are watching, put it in the comments. Tell me where you think the win is here in the SEC for Mississippi State. I have trouble seeing it. I put Arkansas there November 1st as the potential game that they can win. And you mentioned it when you talked about Mississippi State here. Arkansas on November 1st, that is a very tenuous situation. Who knows where Arkansas is going to be at that point? If Arkansas is in quitter mode, if they've now, they've lost multiple games, maybe, they're under 500 yet again, and they're just scratching and clawing, there's a good potential there that roster has just mailed it in. And that Sam Pittman, okay, we know he's on the way out, may get fired the next – if they lose to Mississippi State, he's probably getting fired the next week, But there's that, to me, on this schedule here is the only place that I see a potential win in the SEC. And I just don't have a lot of faith right now in what Mississippi State has going on this season. I think there's potential in the future. I think Jeff Lebby does really need to get this year to 4-8. If he can somehow get to 5-7, there will be some life, some wind at the sails of this program, and then he can start, okay, well, let's retain a little bit on this roster. Let's recruit well, and then let's backfill through the portal. But right now, that's just not where this roster is. It's not where the program is. So I think it's going to be a tough year again in Starkville.
Totally fair. I think even, it feels like I'm stepping out on a limb, even predicting 4 wins. And the reason it feels that way is because it's an uphill climb. Even if they were to get there, I mean, it will never happen, but you could make the argument that Lebby should be up for like SEC Coach of the Year if they can get to 4 or 5 wins, because it's a big task he's got ahead of him.
He's the right coach. I think that Jeff Lebby is a good coach. I think he's the right coach there. Got to get some wins this year in order to get a little bit of momentum.
Right. Well, let's stay in the Magnolia State for our final team prediction of the year with the Ole Miss Rebels and Lane Kiffin. Let's see. They have a fairly workable schedule as well, I would say, which is pretty par for the course as of late. Lane has done a very good job, I would say, of scheduling out-of-conference Power 4 opponents that are not very good. I'm thinking of some Wake Forest games recently. You look at their schedule here, they've got a Wazoo, who probably at the time that was scheduled was still in the Pac-12. But anyway, they start the season with the Georgia State team that took out Vandy, although didn't even come close to making a bowl, so I'm not too worried about that one. Then they go on the road to Lexington to play Kentucky in week 2 in a revenge spot there for the Rebels. Then they are hosting Arkansas, hosting Tulane, and then hosting LSU to close out September before a bye week. We got to get our graphics department up to speed. That Washington State game is not on the road. Ole Miss is not going to Pullman. That would be insane. They are hosting Washington State. But then they do go on the road at Georgia, on the road again at Oklahoma, turn around and host South Carolina, host the Citadel, host Florida, have a bye week, and then they go on the road at Mississippi State. So again, our graphics are a little off here. We'll get this cleaned up before the season. It's still preseason for us, y'all. But so at Mississippi State to close it out. But again, pretty workable schedule there for the Rebels. They only have 4 true road games at Kentucky, at Georgia, at Oklahoma, and at Mississippi State. So 8 games in the vault, 4 on the road, and again, not a true Power 5 opponent, Power 4 opponent any longer out of conference. So all that said, with a lot of new faces in Rebel uniforms this year, how are we feeling about the Rebs? Both of us pretty high. We've got them going 9-3, and you've got the pivotal game being South Carolina. I have the pivotal game being the LSU game. So I will let you kick this one off. Walk us through your 9-3 thoughts, your pivotal game, and just give us an overview of what you're thinking for Ole Miss in 2025.
I struggled with this one. I really thought 8-4. That was what my gut told me, looking at the schedule, just looking at the roster. But, for all you Rebs who are watching us over on Stephen Willis's channel, I just trust Lane Kiffin. The guy wins 9 games a year. Just go look at his history, whether he's at Ole Miss or FAU. He wins 9-10 games a year, and he just finds a way to do it. He finds a way to drop dumb games that he shouldn't drop. We all know that. But this season, maybe the roster is a little bit less talented than last year's roster. Last year was the year, they were really trying to make it happen and get to the college football playoff with the new 12-team playoff. It didn't happen. They were on the cusp. They were, top 12 in the country or top 15 in the country at the end of the year. But even with a little bit less talented roster this year, I still look at Lane Kiffin and just think, I trust him. I think he's going to get him there. I do really like Austin Simmons. We saw one drive of him against Georgia. He marched him right down the field, gets him in the end zone, which got everybody, freaking out and really excited for him going into this season. It got me excited too. And I've been hearing about this kid for a long time. And finally, it's his time to shine. I think he's going to. You got to break in a lot of new wide receivers. You lose a lot of production at wide receiver. I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit worried about the offensive line as well. Got to break in some new guys there. A little bit worried about the secondary as well. Losing a lot in the secondary. Got to break in a lot there. So defensive line as well. Lost a ton along the defensive line. Lane Kiffin has recruited well. He's done very well in the transfer portal. Did well again in the transfer portal this cycle. So we've talked about the newness on these other rosters and the issues that, newness and all that brings. But if there's one exception to the rule, it's Lane Kiffin. And he's done a very good job of bringing transfers in, high-level transfers who have plugged into the system and, elevated the level of this program. So my gut, again, says 8-4, but I'm going to go 9-3 just because I trust Lane Kiffin here. And, to pull up their schedule here, I had – who was it that I had? I had South Carolina here as their pivotal game. And the reason I have that there is because I think that we're probably going to be looking at, the potential playoff spot comes down to that game. In my opinion, I think easily you could have one loss, maybe two going into that game. You look at like LSU, potentially a loss there, potentially a loss with Georgia, potentially with Oklahoma as well. So that 4-week stretch there, 5 weeks with the bye, LSU, Wazoo, Georgia, and Oklahoma, I think that's a pivotal stretch there in their season. I think you're probably looking at 2 losses there since you have to go to Tiger Stadium and LSU, or excuse me, you get the Tigers at home, but you have to go to Georgia. I think LSU is probably a loss even still at home, but Georgia on the road I think is a loss. So I think you probably could beat Oklahoma, but with 2 losses heading into that South Carolina game, I think you got to win that one to stay on that 9-3 potential streak and then keep your playoff hopes alive as well. So for me, South Carolina there is the big pivotal game. I think South Carolina is going to be good again this year. Lenora Sellers, we'll talk about him a little bit later, foreshadowing. But for me, Ole Miss gets to 9-3 again this season. Lane Kiffin is nothing if not consistent in getting to 9 or 10 wins a year. So,
yeah, totally fair. Obviously, I'm in lockstep on this with you as well. I think the Rebs will go 9-3. A big part of it for me is that schedule, as I laid out. Not that it's the easiest one in the world. It's definitely not. There's a lot of losable games on there, but the fact that it is a true just 4 games on the road, you get 8 games at home, and no offense, but 2 of your road games are Kentucky and Mississippi State, who I think are going to be at the bottom of the barrel in the SEC this year. So winnable road games and only 4 total makes me think that they're just going to find a way to get to 9-3. You brought up Austin Simmons. I also think he's going to be good. We talked about this in the over-under segment, but having not seen much of Austin Simmons, it speaks volumes to me that Lane did not get a transfer quarterback. If you recall, even after Jackson Dart had started for a season, he brought in Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State. Mm-hmm. Right. So Lane is not afraid to bring somebody in if he thinks it will help his team or help push his starter, whatever the case may be. He did not do that with Austin Simmons, which makes me think that Lane has a lot of confidence in him. And if Lane has a lot of confidence in him, then I kind of do too, because every single quarterback that plays for Lane puts up big-time numbers, at least in college. So I think there's a lot to be excited about there. You mentioned the turnover. They are breaking in basically an entire new receiving core, which, again, I kind of just give them the benefit of the doubt. I think that's really difficult to do, but Lane has kind of done that with transfers in his time there. The reason I don't have them going better than 9-3 really is the defense, and you kind of laid that out. They lost a ton of guys on the defensive line. I know, similar to the offense, they brought in a ton of guys in the portal. I just not quite sure it's going to be that top level of talent. I mean, just looking at the Pick 6 previews here, of they're 2 deep on defense, so 22 guys, 5 are returning. So that's just a lot of new faces to replace, and again, a lot of high level ones. I mean, they had 4 defensive linemen make all SEC teams a year ago. One of them is back with Suntarine Perkins, I believe, but there's a lot of guys to replace back there. So I think they're probably looking at 9-3. I had the LSU game as the pivotal game because I just thought I think there's a very good chance, all due respect to Arkansas and Kentucky, Tulane, and Georgia State, there's a great chance that Ole Miss is 4-0 coming into that game. It's at home, and LSU at that point, again, foreshadowing here, like there's a very good chance they are not undefeated at that point. So you are probably going to be playing either, if they are undefeated, a flying high LSU team that's already taken out Clemson on the road and Florida, who are, top 15 caliber teams. So if they're undefeated, they're going to be thinking they are on their way to a natty and extremely confident. If they've lost one or even possibly two games, then they're in wounded animal mode, and it's going to be a dogfight. And obviously, Ole Miss lost that game in Death Valley a year ago. So I think for them to really, that'll be their third SEC game. But again, all due respect to Arkansas and Kentucky, feels like their first, real big SEC game. And with that being at home, I just think they could lose that and still get to 9-3. But if they legitimately want to push for a playoff spot, especially with back-to-back road trips at Georgia and at Oklahoma looming, I think that LSU game is one that they are going to want to win and have in their back pocket come late November when we're talking about, an at-large bid to the playoffs.
I'm with you there. Just one more quick thing to add. They don't return any starters in the secondary. They have some talent back there. They brought in some good transfers. They brought in Jalen Braxton from Arkansas. He had 10 pass breakups last year, or in his last 2 years. He had 10 pass breakups in 2 years at Arkansas. And then they also brought in Sage Ryan from LSU. So those guys have plenty of experience playing in the SEC, but they haven't been at Ole Miss. They're new to the system, new to Pete Golding's defense. So 0 returning starters in the secondary, something to keep an eye on for this Ole Miss defense.
Totally. So that will do it for our predictions. If you missed the other segments we've done the last couple of weeks, please go back and watch them. Tell us why we hate your team and why we're wrong. We're happy to hear some constructive feedback in the comments. But yeah, that is our predictions. We do have some graphics. I'm not going to leave these up for too long, but this is kind of what we're thinking, across the SEC. Again, kind of famous last words here. I'm sure a lot of these will look absolutely foolish come November, but coming into the season, this is what we've got, and we are sticking to it. The rest of the show, we've got, again, some SEC awards coming up, and, of course, our Biscuit of the Week and Must Champ Coach of the Week. So be sure to stick around. We appreciate everybody watching. Want to thank our sponsor of tonight's show, the Steer Agency. Football is all about strategy, just like winning in business. Whether you're dialing up the perfect play on Saturdays or looking to dominate in public affairs, PR, or digital marketing, you need a team that delivers results. That's where the Steer Agency comes in. They craft winning strategies that get you seen, heard, and ahead of the competition. Don't just play the game, control it. Visit thesteeragency.com today. Take your brand to the next level. We also want to give a shout out again to Jay Busby, Iron in the Blood. As we mentioned, we do have a contest to give away a free signed copy that Jay was kind enough to send to us a couple of weeks ago. So how to be entered to win, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and sign up for the Morning Biscuits newsletter. You can see the link down there, biscuitsnSEC.com/newsletter. So we're going to do the giveaway next Wednesday on our show. So you need to be following and signed up, let's say by Tuesday, so we can, do the digital raffle and select a winner. So be sure you get signed up for all those for your chance to win a copy. We talked a lot about this last week with Jay if you missed the show, but the book is phenomenal. If you're a fan of college football, if you're a fan especially of Alabama or Auburn, it is truly a must read. It goes super, super in depth over the entire history of the rivalry. I feel like I learned so much about both of those programs, the rivalry, how deep it runs. So if you're a fan of college football and rivalries, it is a must read. So highly encourage you all to buy the book if you don't win the competition or giveaway, but also enter for a chance to win, and we'll shoot you one in the mail. You can have it for free, and it'll be signed by Jay. So yeah, we appreciate the support on that. Again, here's how you can enter that contest. So hopefully we get a lot of entries there. And like I said, we'll be announcing that next week. So be sure to tune in. Obviously, if you can't tune in next week, we'll reach out to whoever wins it. It's not just going to be a live drawing, so to speak. So we'll get in touch if you are lucky enough to win. All right. So as I mentioned, we've got some – now that the predictions are out of the way.
Right before we get to it, also, if you missed our interview with Jay Busby, it was a fantastic interview. We interviewed him. We pre-recorded it and did it on the show last week, and many of you were able to watch it. But if you were not able to watch it, that is on our YouTube right now. You can just go search Biscuits and SEC, and then you'll find the Jay Busby interview there on our channel. So it's about 20 minutes. Fantastic. He gives us plenty of – we ask him some different off-the-wall questions, some out-of-the-box questions about the Iron Bowl and the rivalry. And so please go check that out. It was a fantastic interview, and want to thank Jay once more for his time. That was a good time.
Absolutely. So before we get into SEC title, college football playoff, et cetera, which we'll kind of close our show with, but let's just talk awards for now, right? So we got some preseason awards to give out, Coach of the Year, Player of the Year, et cetera. So we'll just start, I guess, just overall SEC Player of the Year, and this will probably tip some of our hand to the SEC title and college football playoff stuff down the line. But just SEC Player of the Year right off the bat. We've got Boss Man going with Ty Simpson, the brand new starter at Alabama, who's bided his time and now takes over as the starter at Alabama. And then I've got Lenoris Sellers. So give us a quick pitch, if you will, for why you're believing in Ty Simpson for SEC Player of the Year.
We talked about it before the show, not only on Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, which we'll get to in a second, Defensive Player of the Year. There is so many guys. There are so many guys that you can choose from who could potentially win this award. The league is star-studded this year. There are guys all over the place, and somebody who's kind of fallen in the middle there is Ty Simpson. People are excited about Ty Simpson in Tuscaloosa, but not many outside are really talking about him for Player of the Year. I knew you would like that one, Rick. How you like them apples? But I think that Ty Simpson, former five-star, he's been in this system for a while now. This is his second year in DeBoer's system. He's got a lot of guys around him. He's got a lot of weapons around him. Ryan Williams being number one there. I think this Alabama team is going to be very good this year. I've got him going 10-2. So I just think that Ty Simpson, with all that stuff around him and with the fact that I believe Alabama is going to be 10-2, I think he's going to be right there in the thick of the race for Player of the Year, Player of the Year in the SEC, and I think he's going to win it.
Fair, and I've got my guy Mike Huseman supporting me for my Lenoris Sellers pick. Truthfully, my pick might be a little foolish in the sense that I think I picked South Carolina to go 8-4. So how is a guy who's on an 8-4 team gonna win it? It's a long shot, because typically, whether it's the Heisman or Player of the Year conference awards, typically those guys are coming from the best team, especially if they are a quarterback. I just think even for South Carolina to get to 8-4 with what they lost off of last year's team, Sellers is going to have a phenomenal year. And I think, hopefully, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to the sports writers out there that vote on this stuff, or the coaches, that his body of work this year will be at quarterback based on what he has around him, the best in the SEC. I think there's just so much new around him at South Carolina, but I think he's going to be very good. And I think there's going to be a lot of games where you look at it and say, there is 0% chance South Carolina wins this game or is in this game, what have you, without Lenoris Sellers doing superhero stuff under center. So I'm high on him. I think he's going to have a great season, and I think he's right up there at the end of the year for SEC Player of the Year. If he, stays healthy and has the season I think he can. So give me Lenoris Sellers. I'm a believer. Sort of repetitive here. I don't even remember exactly, what all the awards are given out, but we're going to do a specific offensive player of the year too that's non-quarterback centric. So highlighting some other guys we think are going to have big seasons this year that you need to keep an eye on. Boss Man's got Le'Veon Moss, the all-conference running back from A&M a year ago, who, despite missing the last 3.5 games of the season, still made the all-conference team. And as you recall, A&M woefully fell apart after he went down with injury. For me, kind of to piggyback off Boss Man's, player of the year picking Ty Simpson, I am obviously this is not, news to anybody, but I'm high on Ryan Williams. I think second year in the system, he's 18 years old now, for crying out loud. And with Ty Simpson throwing him the ball, I think he's poised for a very big season. So that's my, spiel on Ryan Williams. I think he's probably, outside of Jeremiah Smith, the most talented receiver in the country. And again, second year in the system, he can vote. Just going to be a big year for him. Very big year for Ryan Williams. And I think Ty Simpson will be able to get him the ball. I think DeBoer is a good enough offensive coach to know how to use him and just, get him the ball in space and take the top off the defense. But what about Le'Veon Moss? What are you excited about for him this season?
Yeah, just quickly, I think A&M has the best running back room in the country, maybe top 3, if you want to put them down just a notch. But they have a ton of good running backs in this room. That includes Reuben Owens, the former 5-star, Le'Veon Moss coming back from injury, Reuben Owens doing the same. Le'Veon Moss had 765 yards last year through 9 games. I think that had he had a full season, including a bowl game, he would have gone over 1,000 yards. I think he's the best back in the SEC. And I frankly think that Colin Klein, the offensive coordinator for A&M, with this offensive line, which should be a Joe Moore Award finalist, I think that they're going to ride Le'Veon Moss pretty hard, especially with Marcel Reed. Potentially, I think he's going to be a better passer this year. But at the same time, I think that they're going to lean heavily on that running game. And I think Le'Veon Moss is your workhorse right there. Reuben Owens is a home run hitter, but Le'Veon Moss is the guy that's going to get the bulk of the carries in this offense. And I just think he's poised for a big year. Sounds like he's fully back, fully ready, fully healthy. And a fully healthy Le'Veon Moss should scare everybody in the SEC.
Agreed. I think that's a good pick. I think the only thing that would give me hesitation for a postseason award like that would be the stable that Moss has behind him with Reuben Owens and Amari Daniels, EJ Smith even, got some playing time at the end of the year. So Aggies have a stable. So if they stick with Le'Veon Moss, he's talented enough to put up those numbers. If they, disperse the carries between those guys, then his numbers might not quite be good enough. But talent-wise, I think you're spot on. I think he's an absolute stud. He even said, so for a guy who tore his ACL, MCL, and, really ripped his knee up last year, don't go back and watch that hit. It was really pretty brutal. But he was asked in a preseason press conference earlier this week if he's going to consider going out of bounds. If you recall, that hit was basically on the sideline, and somebody asked him, hey, given this injury that you just sustained, do you think you might run out of bounds some more this season? And he said no. He said no chance. Not interested in that. Like I'm here to play football. I like running through people. I'm not running out of bounds. So he's got a good mentality, a good track record, and if he can stay healthy and gets touches, he'll be lethal for the Aggies. All right, 2 more here. We got our defensive player of the year, and all you Longhorns that are watching out there hating on us for picking the Longhorns to go 9-3 in the regular season with us poo-pooing them, we both picked Texas Longhorns to win defensive player of the year. I've got linebacker Anthony Hill. You have edge defensive end Colin Simmons. So give me your spiel on Colin Simmons.
I think Anthony Hill is a great pick. I wavered on picking Anthony Hill as well. But to me, Colin Simmons is the guy, and he's going to set the tone on that defensive line. 9 sacks last year is ridiculous. And I think if he has something like that season last year, if we're talking 9, if he can push it up to like 12 sacks, 13 sacks, something like that, I just don't think there's any question that he would be defensive player of the year in the SEC. The only other one that I thought about here is Dylan Stewart. However, He doesn't have Kyle Kennard on the other side. I don't think they're as talented on the other side of the defensive line this year at South Carolina. I think he's going to be drawing double teams all year. I still think Dylan Stewart has a great year, but I just don't think that it's to the level of an SEC player of the year, SEC defensive player of the year. So my pick, Colin Simmons. I think he's going to have a ridiculous year this year and really raise his draft stock.
Yeah. Our friend Mike is high on Austin Simmons, Kiffin, and then he's still high on Dylan Stewart. He's got him taking it home. So, I picked Anthony Hill, similar to Colin Simmons. He's just a year ahead, right? Simmons going into his sophomore, Hill going into his junior year. But both of those guys, day one starters, immediate impact players for Texas. Anthony Hill a year ago, 113 tackles, 16.5 tackles for loss, 8 sacks at the linebacker spot, and 4 forced fumbles. So he's just a complete freak show at linebacker. He's all over the field. He's downhill. Obviously, 8 sacks, 16.5 tackles for loss. He's in the backfield everywhere. That's a guy just, he speaks for himself in terms of his play on the field. But that's a guy in this coming weekend against Ohio State, especially, again, all the turnover at Texas, all the turnover at Ohio State. Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill are 2 guys that easily could turn that game for Texas on a turnover or a big sack. I mean, Ohio State has their hands full with those guys, as does everybody that Texas plays, because those 2 are absolute studs on the defense. And if you're replacing quite a bit of production on defense like Texas is, it's really nice to be able to use guys like that as your building blocks, because they can cover up a lot of issues that might be popping up elsewhere with their talent.
Yep.
All right. Lastly, before we hop into our SEC title and college football playoff stuff, we've got Coach of the Year. So, again, I went maybe a little bit foolish here because not to foreshadow, but I'm pretty high on Alabama. And so if Alabama does what I think they will do, Kalen DeBoer will probably win Coach of the Year, which is what Bossman picked. But I'm also high on A&M, shocker. And so I went against the grain and put Elko up there as my Coach of the Year. We'll get into this. I mean, obviously I picked A&M to go 9-3 in the regular season. So I am high on them. And, again, I don't want to spoil it, but I'm quite high on what A&M could do, even with the 9-3 record. So I've got Elko taking it home. Obviously, you have DeBoer. Anything you want to say specifically before we go into our SEC title picks, or should we just reveal that stuff?
I'll just quickly say, I got Alabama going 10-2, which I think the obvious there means that they're in the playoff and probably in the SEC title game. So we can get to that here in just a second. But I think with everything that Kalen DeBoer faced last year, with a couple of those losses that really shouldn't have happened, thinking about Vanderbilt, thinking about Oklahoma, thinking about all the expectations that have been placed on Kalen DeBoer in following the GOAT, I think that this year, if he's able, and I think he will be able to get Alabama to 10-2, if you got a Ty Simpson who's in the running for a SEC Player of the Year, I think that you're the Coach of the Year. And I think that Alabama is going to be much better this year. I have a lot of faith in Kalen DeBoer, and I think that this is the year that he breaks through with Alabama, gets them to the playoff. And if he does that, I think he's Coach of the Year.
Totally fair. Well, let's get to our SEC title game predictions here. Not a ton of disagreement. We both agree that Alabama will face Georgia. Again, if you go back and look at our predictions, that's no surprise. We have both of them going 10-2 and nobody else going 10-2. So obviously these are the 2 teams that we think will square off in Atlanta at the end of the season. Bossman's got Georgia winning it. I've got Alabama winning it. I don't think there's a ton of things we could say about either one of these programs we haven't said already. And there's not a ton of skill in, talking about a game that, even if it takes place, would be taking place in the first week of December. So again, I don't think there's a ton to talk about here other than, I believe in both of these programs. I think if they do end up making it to Atlanta, it will be a coin flip. I'm high on DeBoer, Simpson, that whole operation they have going down there. I think, whoever was saying Alabama was done, I don't think it was anybody that was serious, but I don't think that's the case. I think DeBoer is a great coach, and they will be right there. Similar to Georgia, I think they're going to be right there. So the more things change, the more they stay the same, unfortunately, for every other SEC fan base out there. But I do think we see a Georgia-Alabama title game.
Yeah, Rick, he said, Boss Man is rocking. Sorry to pick the Georgia Bulldogs there and pull a fast one on you in the SEC title game, but to me, I do think Alabama's there. I think it's going to be a close game. We've seen this game so many times over the years. It comes down to the wire. I think it's the same this year. I think both of these teams are the best in the SEC this year. I think that Georgia has a little bit of the edge. I'm a little higher on Gunnar Stockton than folks in the national media are. I also think that wide receiver room that he's got there is the best that they've had there in a long time. And I think that that's really going to be a key and a focal point for Georgia this season is Gunnar Stockton to some of those wide receivers like Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch. So I like Georgia a little bit more in that game. I think Georgia's defense also, everybody kind of like, it's not the Georgia of old. I don't know if it's going to be the Georgia of old, but I expect them to be just as good as they were last year, if not better. So give me Georgia to win the SEC title.
Love it. Well, to close out our predictions, we should just predict what SEC teams we have making it in. This was tough because obviously we're not previewing other conferences, so kind of hard to in your head build out a playoff. But I think both of us were on board with Notre Dame likely getting in again, so that's an at-large bid taken. We both thought the Big Ten would probably get 3 at least in as well. And with the G5 auto bid, ACC Big 12, and we each thought there was another team similar to last year, like an SMU, where it's not just going to be one conference champ from the ACC, conference champ of the Big 12. There's going to be at least 3 teams from those 2 leagues, possibly 4, depending on how it shakes out. Again, not a ton of skill in predicting all the slots here. But for SEC teams, these are the ones that we are going to predict get in. Again, it's kind of hard not to pick 4 teams, honestly, but at the same time, when I look back at the records that I predicted, and I had everybody going 10-2, 9-3 or worse, it's hard to see unless the committee really, really ramps up their strength of schedule, policy, basically, which they said they would, but we'll see. It's hard to see a 4 teams get in if 2 of them are going to have 9-3 records, which, we didn't see that happen at all last year with Alabama and South Carolina getting left on the doorstep. Ole Miss as well, actually. So the 3 teams that went 9-3 didn't make it, but both of us have teams at 9-3 getting in this year. Obviously we have our 2 teams, Alabama and Georgia, that we think will be in the title game. Will get in. I, homer pick of the year here, have A&M getting in. And then you have LSU. My reasoning for picking A&M there at 9-3 when I had Texas and some other schools going, again, so hard to predict this stuff way out in the future, but very, very much a homer pick here. I just decided that A&M is going to beat Texas in DKR in the final game of the regular season to return the favor for what they did to us last year. As a result, A&M will get the nod over Texas, even though they have the same record. But what about you? What makes you think LSU is able to sneak in there at 9-3?
I just think that LSU is going to have the right wins on their schedule in order to get in at 9-3. I think they're talented enough this year to get to 9-3. I like Garrett Nussmeier being in his second year as the starter at LSU. And I also like what they brought in on defense. I think year 2 of Blake Baker is going to be another big step up for LSU. I know that they had to bring in a lot in the transfer portal, but I like the talent that they brought in the transfer portal. So you had A&M there, and I think that's probably because you're thinking that A&M gets that win in Austin against Texas at the end of the year. And if we both have Texas at 9-3, and you have A&M beating Texas to get to that 9-3 mark at the end of the year and drop Texas to 9-3, that means that you're thinking that A&M gets in over Texas. And I think that LSU is the one that ends up getting in at 9-3 over an A&M and over a Texas. So that means I think LSU is probably going to have that win over Texas A&M. So I just think that LSU has the right stuff this year. I think that this is finally going to be the year. Okay, LSU fans aren't going to be super happy that, it's not 10-2 regular season and getting into the playoff, but I think that they will cool down a little bit on Brian Kelly if he's able to get them to the playoff, even if it's at 9-3. My other quick thing to say on this is that I didn't pick 4 teams to get in because of the factors that you mentioned at the outset, but you also have to look at the playoff committee. Who is on the college football playoff committee? Chris Alt is the guy who's heading it. He's a Nevada guy. And if you look across the playoff committee, where are these guys from? I know they try to be unbiased, but we're all human. You got to have your bias is going to creep in to a certain degree. There's not a whole lot of folks from the South or from that region who are on this playoff committee. You're looking at a lot of people who are from the former Pac-12, now the Big Ten, or the Big 12 with Arizona State, former Arizona State guy there, Nevada, Nebraska, like a lot of that sort of stuff. So looking at the makeup of the committee as well, I see some anti-SEC bias most likely. And I'm thinking that probably means you're only going to get 3 in there, especially if you have a Notre Dame. And I think that the Big 12 is up this year as well. I think you could potentially get in 2 from the Big 12. So starting to play the numbers game there, I think that means that the SEC only gets 3 in there. And so I'm taking the 2 that make the SEC title game, the ones we talked about, Bama, Georgia, and then I like LSU to get that to get that 3rd spot at 9-3.
Love it. Well, again, feel free to tell us where we're wrong in the comments and, let us know why we're way off base. I'm sure, again, most of these predictions will look foolish in just a few weeks, but that's what we do it for. It's preseason. Everybody's out here guessing, flying by the seat of their pants. And the good news is we don't have to do that anymore after this weekend. We'll actually have real football to talk about. We don't have to give our blind thoughts on what the transfer portal haul for program X and Y is going to mean, because we'll get to see them on the field. So everybody's excited about that. Well, we've already gone a little bit over time. We've got 2 more things left. We've got our Muschamp Coach of the Week, followed by our Biscuit of the Week. You ran with the Muschamp Coach of the Week, so I'll hand it off to you here to show everybody what we got.
Okay, so our Muschamp Coach of the Week, for any of you new here, we love Coach Muschamp. Coach Muschamp epitomizes what it means to be a college football coach. He may not have had the success that he would have liked to at Florida or at South Carolina. However, he's passionate, loves his players, always good for a quip with the media, and love to fly off the handle as well. Just an old school football coach. So we like to name a Muschamp Coach of the Week here every single week. And sometimes it can be funny, sometimes it can be serious. This week, it's a little bit more serious. Congratulations to Lee Corso, the Muschamp Coach of the Week. I believe his 2nd win. But Coach Corso, so many of us grew up with him. And even for those of you who have been, adults for most of his career, he's been at ESPN forever. The guy made College Game Day what it is. And the headgear pick is iconic. Everybody waited and watched College Game Day to get to the end to see who Corso was going to pick and what headgear he was going to don every Saturday. So we love Coach Corso. Congratulations to him on an incredible career. He is our Muschamp Coach of the Week. Here's a quick tribute from ESPN, and then I've got one clip I want to play that is one of my favorite Corso moments from his time at College Game Day. So here's the tribute.
You talk football, life is good.
All these years on television, I want them to remember me as a guy they made him smile.
How can you pick against SMU?
Coach Corso is a maestro of the crowd. He can take them on a ride like not many people in the history of television can.
I love you.
I think Coach is the ultimate mascot of college football.
Go Navy!
Lee Corso, life of the party.
That dog is ugly!
He just provides so much joy. When he comes on stage, everyone's face changes.
The Lord of the Dance!
He's the patron saint of college football.
I'll take Florida State 31-30!
Coach at Indiana. He coached at Navy. And he really has ushered the current era of sports media where you're not just educating, you're entertaining.
Virginia is ranked #1 in football. Can you believe that?
He's on the Mount Rushmore as far as TV personalities and their influence on football.
This is my school.
Lee Corso suffering a stroke caused by blockage to a small artery.
No one was sure what that was going to mean for his life or his career.
Lee Corso's college football is the only one in America.
He was determined to just not skip a beat.
Not so fast. Not so fast.
Not so fast.
Not so fast.
Not so fast, my friend.
Not so fast, my friend. Love Coach Corso. That is an awesome tribute. If you haven't seen it yet, ESPN put out a documentary about his time at ESPN, his time in college football, what he's meant to college football. The clip of Kirk Herbstreit crying as he talked about, what Coach Corso meant to him, and their friendship and their relationship is well worth a watch if you haven't seen it yet. I have not had a chance to watch that documentary just yet, but I'm looking forward to it, and looking forward to Coach Corso in week 1 in his final college game day appearance when Texas takes on Ohio State. So finally, there's so many clips that you can choose from. And if you go back, we did this on probably 15 or so shows ago during the offseason. But when he announced his retirement, we had some of the greatest hits of Coach Corso, one of them being the F-bomb that he dropped on live TV in the morning one year. But I decided to go with one other clip here. This is Coach Corso, probably my favorite clip of all time of Coach Corso.
Go Bulldogs!
Yale Bulldogs. Oh, wow. Not so fast, midget. Not so fast.
Midget?
Yeah, little guy. Hey, not so fast. I go with Harvard. What's the matter?
Not so fast, midget.
Yeah, I just can't wait to watch him one last time this coming Saturday. That will be appointment viewing. It's just over the years I've sort of faded. I'm more of an SEC nation, or I got stuff going on in the morning. It's not like I'm 12 anymore, and just my entire Saturday revolves around game day to college football. But this Saturday, there's no doubt I will be watching from start to finish college game day because of Coach Corso. So, yeah, a well-deserved Muschamp Coach of the Week for the Sunshine Scooter as he rides off into the sunset.
Well-deserved, Coach Corso. We love you. God bless you. Thank you for everything you did for college football.
No doubt. So, all right, we've already we're 23 minutes over our 1 hour our 1 hour time slot, which is funny because we go over every week, so it's not even really an hour show anymore. But we're going to close that with a biscuit of the week. Our good friend Mike Huseman of SEC After Dark, Off Season After Dark. He's been chatting it up in the comments, but he sent us one recently. He's in West Virginia, so this is a local spot for him. Tudor's Biscuit World, and I've seen these because I've had the pleasure of driving through West Virginia quite a few times, but never eaten at one. The one pictured there is the one in Huntington, West Virginia, where Mike is at, where the University of Marshall Thundering Herd is located. They are a chain, so I looked it up. They're based out of West Virginia, so it's a West Virginia chain. They've got a bunch of restaurants in the great state of West Virginia, and then they have a couple in that general area, I think Ohio, Kentucky, and perhaps even Pennsylvania. So they are a chain, and I will say when I looked this up, again, having never been a patron myself, I was pretty jacked up about it. I honestly might have to make a trip. If I'm ever in West Virginia again, I will definitely stop because they have 12 different biscuit sandwich options on their menu. I mean, they truly are this is no shade at all. I love, Bojangles, but they don't have 12 biscuit options on their menu. I mean, it's pretty standard. Like you got your chicken biscuit, your bowberry biscuit, there's a few options, but Biscuit World over here, Tudor's Biscuit World has 12 different sandwich options. At least the menu I checked out. And true to our, passionate college football roots, they have a sandwich named the Thundering Herd. They have a sandwich named the Mountaineer. So these seem like our kind of people running Tudor's Biscuit World. And you can see a little snapshot of the sandwich there. That looks great. A sausage, hash brown, and cheese biscuit. Sign me up. So shout out to Mike. We'll have to get your live review one time of Tudor's Biscuit World. But also, I did want to shout out too, just like I said, that the outside of that building is the one in Huntington, and it looks perfect. I mean, you talk about just a nondescript, like there's your drive-through window, there's your front door. It looks like a front door to someone's home. And what are we about? Biscuits. We're Tudor's Biscuit World. We got 12 biscuits on the menu. We got biscuits and gravy. We got all this different stuff. And, we're not here for a fancy frou-frou experience. You're coming here to get biscuits, and it's going to be a brick brown building with a nondescript door. I mean, it's just perfect.
It is perfect. You can almost call it Biscuit Barn, the way that building looks, which is just spot on. When we're looking for biscuits or anything, I look at some nondescript building like that with a sign that looks like it's from 1975, 1980, and that's maybe somewhere that like George Jones would stop into back in the day after a long night out to sober himself up. And that is what Tudor's Biscuit World looks like. It looks like an awesome spot to grab a biscuit, to grab a sandwich. I mean, I'm looking at this biscuit right now, and it's dinner time for me, so I am starving. But that is a fluffy biscuit there on the inside, and then a crispy outside. Like those people know what they're doing there at Tudor's Biscuit World, and that sausage looks incredible. Gosh, yeah, I definitely am putting that one on my list whenever I'm up in the West Virginia area again, or somewhere in the Midwest where they've got a Tudor's Biscuit World. You can bet I'm going to be looking them up.
Me too. And again, just to talk about the style of this place, I think the new Cracker Barrel CEO could take a page out of Tudor's Biscuit World book and know that your clientele is not interested in some sterile LED light shiplap dining experience. They want good food, and they want it to look like 1985. And Tudor's Biscuit World understands that, and Cracker Barrel, I guess apparently they're not changing it, but anyway, they mess with the wrong crowd, and I don't think Tudor's Biscuit World's going to be doing anything like that anytime soon. So shout out to them. If you're in the area, go check it out and let us know how their biscuits are.
Please do. Yeah, those look darn good. I want a Big Mouth Billy Bass on the wall. I want some fishing tackle. I want a high school football jersey, a Tim Riggins jersey on the wall, and I want some damn good biscuits. And it looks like Tudor's Biscuit World has those. So good shout out, Mike. Thanks for the tip. Absolutely. Well, finally, that is going to be the end of our show. So thank you all so much for joining. We got well over 100 people watching tonight, so we appreciate it. Please consider, before you go, subscribing to our YouTube channel. We're trying to grow that this season. Subscribe to our newsletter down below, all the above. We talked about our giveaway that we'll announce next week, in case you missed it right there. Whoops, we're double timing here. So just appreciate all the support that we're getting. We're trying to really grow this thing as the season kicks off in 2025. So if you like what we are doing here, we, of course, appreciate the support. We'll be back next week with real football to talk about. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Enjoy your weekend. Week 1 is finally here. The long dreaded off season has come to a close. So enjoy it, soak it in, and we'll be back to see y'all next week. I'm Hammer. I'm Boss Man. Appreciate you guys. Football is back, baby. Yep. We'll see you next Wednesday. See y'all next week.